Margie and I are convinced that leadership is all about managing energy. Where was there more energy in the room, the first activity or the second? Second, significant. What did I do to change the energy in the room? All I changed was what you were thinking about. Isn't that interesting, you know? And when I changed what you were thinking about from positive to negative, from negative to positive, the whole energy changed. And what's really interesting is that not only did the energy change, but your behavior changed. I didn't tell you how to act, did I, with unimportant people, but you did. What? Very little eye contact, very little touching and all. Then I said, these are long lost friends. What happened? Your faces lit up, you started to laugh, hug each other and all. And in the Bible it says, as a man thinketh, a man become. And so it's very interesting. How many of you know that the mind and the computer have a lot in common? Neither the mind or the computer know about the difference between the truth and what you tell it. You put information in a computer, it doesn't say, where'd you get that information? That information's wrong. What do they say about the computer? Is garbage in what? Garbage out. So the computer does the best it can with what you give it. So is your mind. So your mind doesn't know the difference between the truth and what you tell it. Whatever you tell it, it does. If you woke up this morning and looked in the mirror and said, you are fabulous, your mind's not going to say, who are you kidding? I know you a lot better than that. And so when we talk about, developing your leadership point of view, what is that? It's your beliefs about leading and motivating people. And if your beliefs about leading and motivating people are positive, in other words, you are, from my standpoint and Jesus' standpoint, you're a servant leader, you're there to serve, not to be served. That's very different, the energy that you create, if you go there with the idea that it's all about you, and, leadership is about everybody getting me what I want and all that. It's a very different energy that's created, and it is about a belief, see? And it's so interesting is that Jesus, as he was here in his short ministry for 3 years, one of the most important things he did was what? He took these 12 people and spent 3 years really teaching him his leadership point of view. They were a slow group, so it took him a while. But that's really what he was doing. Early on, he was very clear about leadership, wasn't he? About his beliefs. I was telling the group this afternoon, one of my favorite parts of Matthew is when John and James' mother comes to Jesus and says, can one of my sons sit in your left hand and one in your right hand? She figures it's a hierarchy and she wanted to get her kids in first, And after Jesus said it wasn't for him to grant, of course the next line is that, the other 10 were indignant, why were they indignant? Because their mother wasn't there, and these guys are going to beat me to the hierarchy, but Jesus sat him down, and I think one of his really straight, speeches was that the Gentiles lord power over you, and the great amongst you, uses authority. Not so with you. That's a pretty powerful statement. First I read it, I underlined that. That's a pretty powerful. It's not sort of saying this is an optional deal. He said, if you want to lead, you need to serve. Essentially, and you should be a servant. If you want to be first, you need to be last. Even I have come to serve, not to be served, and to give my life as a ransom. And I had to follow Chuck Colson one time, and I heard Chuck had gotten sick the other night, but I understand he's doing much better. But Chuck ended his speech, and then I had to go after him. He said, and all the kings and queens in history all sent their people out to die for them. He said, I only know one king who decided to die for his people. So my opening line was, I don't think Jesus wants you to die for your people, but you might want to listen to him once in a while. You might want to serve them. You might want to help them. And it was interesting. Phil Hodges and I, who started our Lead Like Jesus ministry, we got interested. Where did Jesus learn about leadership? Because there's not much about Jesus after that one scene when he was about, 10 or 11 years old, when they lost him in the city and they found him at the temple. There's only two remarks about him later on, isn't he, the carpenter's son or what? But you wonder, where did he learn about leadership? Well, one of the things that Margie will talk to you about is one of the ways you learn by leadership is by who are the important people in your life. And it's really interesting is when you look at Mary, she was really the first servant leader. I mean, because when the angel came to her and said, here's the deal, first she was saying, why me and all that. But then she said, whatever you say, basically, I'm here to serve. I mean, she was the first servant leader, and pretty amazing person. Margie and I got a chance to go to Rome with a pilgrimage from the Catholic Church. We got interested. They have a Pope John Paul cultural center in Washington, and they got interested in what we were doing with Lead Like Jesus. We aren't Catholics, but we went over there, and it was so interesting, just to learn thing. And we read a book called Rome Sweet Home about the couple that wrote that were studying to be, Presbyterian ministers. And the more the husband read, the more he wanted to be a Catholic. But in the book, it was really interesting how we pick on each other in our religions, I mean, you won't believe when we started Lead Like Jesus, people say, you're not going to share this with the Catholics. I mean, well, who do they believe in, And one of the things they said in the book is that a lot of, quote, Protestants and all think that they make too big a deal of Mary. But it said, isn't the commandment to love thy mother and thy father? Well, maybe we overdo Mary, but you all don't give Mary the time of day. And I want to tell you, Mary was the first servant leader, and I think Jesus got a lot there. And then Phil got really interested in, well, where did Jesus learn how to develop people? And he got interested in, is it God can plan anything, I mean, there's no accidents. Why did he make Jesus a carpenter? So Phil got a whole bunch of carpenters together and said, what do you think's the relationship between carpentry and leadership? And they said, that's really interesting. We had never thought about it. And all of a sudden they started to pull things like a really good carpenter can see the finished product ahead of time. They got a vision. Great carpenters know how to use a variety of tools. Great leaders know how to have a variety of leadership styles. Great carpenters know how to work with different kinds of material. And they started to look at, wow, isn't that really interesting? And then he said, well, how do you become a really good carpenter? Oh, you have to learn from a master teacher. And they said, isn't it interesting? He said, well, how does that work? Well, he said, well, there's 4 stages. And it's so interesting. They move from a novice to an apprentice to a journeyman to a master teacher. And years ago, I developed a theory called situational leadership that says you change the leadership style as the development level of the people that you're managing changes. And isn't it interesting, when Jesus hired this group, he said, come with me, I'm going to make you fishers of men. What did he do in the first commission? There's a couple of pages of directive behavior. Why? Because they were novices. They didn't know what to do. He says, now go, stay here, wear this, do this, and all, because with novices, you got to give them direction. And then over time, they now become apprentices, so they know something, but they get a little discouraged, particularly when that father came and said to Jesus, would you cure my son? Your disciples tried, but they couldn't, And there's a wonderful visual Bible that tells the story, and all, they're over, got their heads down and all. And so Jesus had to change his leadership style from a directing style to more of a coaching. They said, why couldn't we drive the demons out, so little faith? If you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move a mountain, and because he answers the question why, and you start seeing him changing his leadership style, and then after a while where they become journeymen, where they know stuff, he see a much more supportive leadership style. Even when Peter, said, Lord, if that's you out there, call me out. So Peter bops out on the water. He's the only other guy that's got it on his resume. And but then all of a sudden the wind blew and he got scared. And he's going down. He said, save me, Lord. And Jesus didn't say, "You idiot, how could you be so stupid?" He reached his hand out and pulled him out and said, "Ye of so little faith, why didn't you trust me," essentially. Give him the beautiful supportive leadership style and all. And then, finally he thinks that they got to become master teachers and he's going to leave. So what was his leadership style at the end of Matthew? It was delegating. Very different than the first commission, because he didn't give him a lot of direction. He said, "Go and make disciples of all nations." And so it really is interesting. Phil would say, "Isn't that interesting?" So he learned from both his mother and father. Mother probably servant, and he learned from his father how to develop people over time and how you move them from novice to apprentice to journeyman to master teacher. Because in Acts, here's Peter, who is a real schlump. You wouldn't have hired him. He saves a crowd of 2,000 or 3,000 people. He's really a fisher of men. And but I think what's so interesting that we have found about having you think about your leadership point of view, your beliefs about leading and motivating people, is that once you start getting in touch with it, the important thing is to share it with others. There's a wonderful guy by the name of Noel Tishy from Michigan, wrote a book called The Leadership Engine. And he spent a lot of time with Jack Welch and Herb Kelleher and all. He said all the great leaders he studied in industry all have a very clear leadership point of view, and they're willing to share it and teach it to others. I mean, Jack Welch always spent 35, 40 days a year in Crotonville teaching his leadership point of view. Herb Kelleher, same amount, just teaching their leadership point of view. Why is it important to teach your leadership point of view? So people can understand who you are and what your beliefs are, and so they know what to expect from you and what you expect of them. And that's really helpful. Would it be helpful to you if you were working with somebody and they came and called you all together and said, "What I'd love to do is share with you my leadership point of view, my beliefs about leading and motivating people"? And so that's why Marge and I have gotten really interested in this, and we've developed a whole course in 2 master's degree programs that we're involved in. We have a Master of Science in Executive Leadership at the University of San Diego. It's a wonderful program. The students come for 1 3-day weekend a month for 2 years and 1 week each summer. And we start off with self-leadership and then move to one-on-one leadership, then to team leadership and organizational leadership. And then we integrate a lot of the business acronym in the rest of the courses. But I looked at all the MBA programs around the world, and they don't do 2 things. Number one, they don't teach anything about leadership. They tuck it in an organizational behavior course. And then all they're trying to do is change the way people think. And Jesus was really interested in you having a heart attack. One of your values, after truth comes what? Transformation. Where does transformation start? It starts in the heart, and you need to be transformed before you can go out and give testimony and and all that kind of thing. And so, and then we have a program at Grand Canyon University, which is a blended learning experience, where the students come for 4 days in the beginning of the program on self-leadership, 4 days in the middle on leading others one-on-one in teams, and 4 days in organizations. Then the rest of the courses are online there. And we always have a dinner the night before graduation with all of our students, and I go around with a microphone and say, "What does this program mean to you?" And half the students cry. And presidents and deans have been there and said, "What kind of program are you running, Blanchard?" I mean, I've never seen any students cry. And there was a guy who was filming one of our graduations over at Grand Canyon in Phoenix, and he came up, he said, "This is an MBA program?" That's an executive MBA program. I said, "Yeah." He said, "I just filmed all the graduates at Arizona State, and they were talking about how to get the credential they needed to get the position, and your people didn't say one thing about that. Talked about what a difference it made in their family and their relationship with their kids and with their people." Because Jesus, he really wants us to go out into the world and make a difference. I think we don't push abundant life enough. I think we're all pulling the hell card too quickly with non-believers, and we ought to pull the abundant life card, which is What is it like to walk with Jesus and to love and to lead and all? And so we really force people to really think through who are the people that impacted their life and their way of thinking about leadership, and where did that come from, and what does that mean in terms of your beliefs and your values, and what is it there, because I look back, people say, where did you start, getting your attitude towards leadership? I had an amazing father. He was an admiral in the Navy, but he was one of these great Americans, He went to the Naval Academy, graduated in 1924, and they didn't need naval officers in 24. We just finished World War I in 22. And so they released him after his senior cruise, and he went to Harvard Business School in January 25, and then went to Wall Street and started with Anaconda Copper and then National City Bank, and they were grooming him for a vice presidency. And he came home in 1940. I was 1 year old. And he said to my mom, well, I quit today. She said, to do what? He said, I rejoined the Navy. She said, you did what? He said, didn't I tell you when we got married, if the country ever got in trouble, I thought I owed it something, and Hitler's nuts. It's just a matter of time until the Japanese get in this thing. So he goes from a potential vice president to a second Louis, and they put him down in Brooklyn Navy Yard. And after Pearl Harbor, it looked like he was going to stay there because he had no experience. That wasn't my father's style. One of his classmates had stayed in and was one of the top guys of the Bureau of Personnel for the Navy in Washington. He called him and he said, John, what do you got for an old guy with no experience? I got to get in the action. I said, Ted, let me look into it. And 4 days later, he called back. He said, all I got for a guy with your experience is a suicide group going into the Marshall Islands. And my dad said, you got your man. They gave him 12 LCIs, landing craft infantry, and their job was to protect the Marines and the Frogmen, which are now the SEALs, going into Saipan, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Tini, and all the major battles. 75% of his men were killed or wounded. And he was just an amazing guy. And they got a picture of me at 5 years old in a Navy suit saluting to greeting his train, because he left in 42 and came back in 45. You couldn't commute in those days, particularly from the Pacific. And I'll never forget, I win the president of the 7th grade. I had an interesting upbringing. I went to a 95% Jewish elementary school, and on Jewish holidays they threw us all in one room. And then I merged into junior high with a 95% black school. In fact, the school that went to the Supreme Court in '61 to test a neighborhood school that started busing. And I was a basketball player, and I was bright, so I won all the elections as a compromise candidate. So I came home. I'm the president of the 7th grade, and I told my dad, and that was the beginning of my leadership lessons. He said, congratulations, Ken, but now that you're president, don't ever use your position. He said, great leaders are great because people respect and trust them, not because they have power. And that began my lessons from him, because he said, you're nothing without your men. I don't know what I would do without my chiefs, because they had all the information and all that kind of thing. So that was a really important thing. And then my mom, she said to me, don't you act like you're better than anybody else, but don't you let them act like they're better than you. God didn't make any junk. He loves us all. And, she invented positive thinking before Norman Vincent Peale even thought about it. So, but that all began my journey. And so my leadership point of view is really grown over the years. And when I, as a late comer to the Lord, went to Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts, it just blew my mind, because I realized that everything I've ever taught about leadership, everything I've ever written about leadership, Jesus did with these 12 inexperienced guys he hired. And he's the greatest leadership role model of all time. So, but we really push our students to get in touch with their own leadership point of view. And I want to turn it over to Margie. I married way above myself with Margie. We met at Cornell. She was going out with all my friends, and they told me how great she was. So I took her out one time to do a friend a favor, and that was it for that friend. But he named his first kid Ken, so he was okay. But we teach this course, and Margie really manages the whole process of helping people get in touch with their leadership point of view. So
Okay, good. Thank you. One of the things that I've noticed in working with universities, and we were in the university for several years, is that it's hard for universities sometimes to actually recommend that you do one thing or another. They like to give you the whole, all the different leadership theories and let you pick one. But we definitely, after growing our company and being out with so many clients, we have a few very strong recommendations. And one of them is this idea of figuring out enough about yourself that you can share it with people whom you're trying to influence, which is our definition of leadership. And some magical things happen, first of all, in the process of figuring yourself out enough to use language. I was speaking to a group of women earlier, and life is lived in language. And if you are smart enough or take the time to figure out what are the important things that have happened to you and what were the learnings that came out of them that you'd like to share, and then what are the expectations you have as a result of those learnings that people should have of you, and what are expectations that you have of them. And if you can put that out there, we'd save a lot of time in this country, because people are always boss watching. They're always trying to figure out what does that boss want. But if you could preempt that and do that thinking and doing that sharing, you not only would it be very good for you, but it would be very good for the people who work with you. But this process is a process, and I loved listening to Colleen Barrett. We've gotten to know her pretty well because Ken wrote a book with her about Southwest Airlines. And one of the things that she says is that people admire you for your accomplishments, but they love you for your vulnerabilities. And that is such an interesting thing to think about, is how do you let people know enough about yourself so that they see underneath the boss. So let me have you imagine that I'm giving you my leadership point of view, okay? So I might start it out, and I might start out say, we've all been meeting here every week, and I'd like to do something a little bit different today. I'd like to sort of back up and tell you a little bit about me and my beliefs and sort of where they came from and some of the things that are important to me. And so one of the things you probably need to know is that I'm the oldest child of a family of 5. I was born in Rochester, New York, and very close family. We moved a lot. And something happened to me early on in my career that was pretty meaningful and taught me a lot of lessons. My mom had a baby every 5 years. My youngest brother was born when I was a freshman in college. But one of my mother's points of pride was waiting as long as possible before she told people that she was pregnant. So she was pregnant when I was a senior. And that was the year that people wore chemise dresses. I don't know if you remember what they were, but they were perfectly, flat, plenty of room. So I went along with Mother, and I didn't tell anybody that Mother was pregnant because that was her point of pride. She got through my whole graduation in these chemise dresses. We went off to our summer cottage, came home, I scurried around. Most of my friends had left for college, got ready to go to Cornell, and went off to college. And my brother Tom, first boy, 4 girls, was born on November 1st. We were so excited. So I come home for Thanksgiving, and first time I see Tom and everything, and the very first night we sit down to dinner, my sister tells me that there's a rumor going around that Tom is my baby. because that's what happened back then. You know, there was no birth control. There was nothing. People, if they did get pregnant, they would run off and I guess have their babies, and then the parents would raise the baby as their own. And well, I'm telling you, I was astounded. I mean, I guess that's the only thing I could say. I don't even think I was crushed. I was astounded, absolutely astounded, that people didn't know me well enough to know that probably wouldn't happen. I was having a wonderful time at Cornell, and I had kind of moved on. But I learned a tremendous series of lessons out of that. And the first lesson I learned was, you know, the juicier the gossip, the more suspect it is. And that has served me over many years. And I actually believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. And that actually is a belief that I have. And so as my team, that's something that you'll probably see of me. The second thing I learned was that if you don't tell people what's happening to you, and something surprising happens, people will make it up. And that's exactly what happened. People made it up. And what that has caused me to want to do as a leader is to be as transparent as I can be, to let you know as much as I know about things. It's probably why I'm so interested in this area of leadership point of view, because it's a way of sort of preempting and kind of getting what I believe out ahead of maybe what you're going to make it up. And the third thing, and this took a little bit of time, is that I thought back over that whole thing, and I thought about how could that have happened? You know, people who were spreading the rumors, and there is a little postscript to this, but I really realized that they were doing the best they could, those people, even the ones who were spreading the rumors, given their level of awareness. And I do believe that people are always doing the best they can at all times, given their current level of awareness. And that is extending grace. It's extending grace to them, but I also believe I'm doing the best I can at all times, given my level of awareness. If I get smarter, maybe I'll do better. But I don't wake up in the morning, nor do I think you do, thinking, how can I screw up today? And so, those are three things you need to know about me. Now, a postscript to this story is I just went back to my 50th high school reunion, and I sent in my one page, what have I done since I graduated and everything. And I got a call back from this guy, Tex Ritter, who'd been a friend of mine. And he said to me, Margie, I'm glad you're coming. He said, but I have something I need to talk to you about. Something that's been heavy on my heart for 50 years. He said, do you have any idea what I'm talking about? I said, I think I know what it is. And he said, I was one of the people that spread that rumor. And I have felt terrible about it in some hidden part of my heart for many years. I'm just so glad we're going to see you, and you know that life has worked out well for you and everything. But again, I went back and I thought, Tex Ritter. Tex was doing the best he could given his level of awareness at that time. And now that he's smarter, you know, had he been smarter at that time, or had I been smarter, maybe he would have done differently. But those are some learnings that I would like to have us operate under in this team. And so let me just say that's phase one of my leadership point of view. If I were to share it with you, I might also start it out by talking about my grandmother and some lessons that I learned from her as she went through the Depression and knit, you know, sweaters for ladies that, you know, could buy them in Buffalo, New York, and how much I admire initiative, and how much I admire somebody that is resourceful, and those are things that I also expect. But my point in this whole thing would be to share something about myself enough that people would know who I was, even people that I'd been working with for a while, and know what I expect. Because the last part of a leadership point of view is actually, I think, the most important, because all of you as my employees or my colleagues are kind of sitting there thinking, well, what's the point? What do I need to know, you know? And so the last thing I might do is talk about what I expect. And so in this case, maybe I expect, I might have talked about, let's say, being resourceful or being open to new ideas. One of the things I loved about my grandmother was she would visit us in Philadelphia, and she was a flower arranging judge. And just to be nice, I would always ask her if she wanted to go with me when we would, when I would be doing errands. And she always wanted to go. And she was so curious about everything. Why did I wear my collar up? This was back in the 50s, and all these things. And she was just such an alive and curious person, and I just love that. And one of the things that I expect of you as on my team is curiosity. And I expect you to be interested in the things that are happening at the edges and to ask questions. And Ken, I just so appreciated the other day when you found that new app that that was going to be so helpful to our group, and you brought it in and showed it. This is really not Ken at all, but let me just say, But what I would do, what I would do is I would share an expectation, like I expect people to be open to ideas and look for them on the side and the edges and everything. And then what I would say is, and I so appreciated Francisco, who brought in that new app the other day and, figured out how to use it and then showed it to us. And so one of the things that you need to do with a leadership point of view is you need to, when you get to what do you expect and what do people expect of you, you need to point out people in your organization who are already doing what you love. Not only so that people can see themselves in being able to do that themselves, but also so you get away from this whole idea of mother and apple pie and all this, words. So stories, examples. This is somebody who, Lily, I just love the fact that you took the initiative to put together that course on stress that you're now teaching. That is true, and I love that about Lily, but I need to tell everybody else what I want to see more of, and that kind of thing, so that you bring it down to the level of personal experience, and people walk away saying, okay, I know Margie a little better. I know where some of her beliefs came from. I know what her learnings were out of those beliefs as they've turned into expectations. I think I can win in this organization, because that's what we want. We want people to feel that they can win in organizations. And this is just one thing that we're doing. But we are now working, it takes me about 4 hours to get a whole group as big as you prepared to give their leadership point of view. And the way we do it is I would have you interview each other. I would have you be in pairs, and the two of you would interview each other about what was an event that might have happened that might have shaped your leadership, just like the event of, my mom getting pregnant and that sort of thing. And then I'd put you in another pair about what are some people who, like Ken's dad, that might have influenced, and what did you learn from them? And then what do you expect, and who's done what you expect? And all that might roll up into maybe some values that you put these things under, and some examples. And you've got a 15-minute leadership point of view. But it takes a little bit of time and some coaching. But mostly people learn from actually discussing it. And one of the things we've learned that's so exciting is when somebody's asking you questions, it's so much easier for you to answer the questions than it is for you to think of it yourself and sort of, lash you to the bed and see if we can pull out of you what are your most serious thoughts. People love to be interviewed, and they think of things, and then when they have a chance to hear their whole table group, they remember other things as well. And what we're searching for is that little piece of you that you're willing to share, or a few pieces of you that you're willing to share, that help people understand why you are the way you are, and why the things are important to you that are important, and how that turns into expectations or into things that will help the person succeed. So this is our recommendation. This is something we work on. I was working with Express personnel not too long ago, 125 entrepreneurs who run their own little franchises for Express personnel. And we worked for 4.5 hours, and when they left, they all had their leadership point of view, and it was all finished. And they were all heading back so that they could deliver it to their people. And that is actually one of my new learnings about education, especially executive education, is I actually believe we need to get our students almost all the way through whatever it is we want them to do, and not send them home to do homework because they go home to a pile of stuff anyway, and we've really got to use the time that they're in class to really work on fewer things, but get them to finish them so that they can honestly do what it is that they need to do when we get home. And so I am going to have you do that. I'm going to ask you to pair up, and I know this is lovely, but I'd like to have you pair up, and I'd like to have you talk to the interview. You're only going to have 7 minutes for this, 3.5 minutes each. Interview your partner about what was an event or a person who had an impact on you, and what did you learn from them? Anyway, I'll ask them to send me a verbatim copy of their leadership point of view, not only so that I can enjoy it, but also so that they have a copy of it and they can change the stories and add to things. One fellow I know uses his leadership point of view for orientation every year. He's the head of a hospital. I just got a wonderful leadership point of view in the mail. It was a guy who was in one of our classes, and he was he runs a veterinary hospital, and he talked a lot about people that one of his expectations, one of his visions is that they would become so almost like the Mayo Clinic. He said, imagine the Mayo Clinic. What if we were like that? That was sort of his vision that he cast in that. And then he pointed out this one person in his organization who had started a whole new practice area and how proud he was of her. And, it was a game changer, and that's something that he just loved. And then another one. But then he ended up by saying, we used to sit around the room and we used to talk about what do we love most about our job. And some of us talked about different medical procedures and, endoscopy and all the rest of it. And he said, finally, I got really clear that the favorite part of my job is to get licked in the face by a dog. And he said it happens several times a day. And he said that, and when he said that, and when I read it, I just fell in love with him. I just thought, that's the kind of guy that I want to follow, because he likes being licked in the face with a dog. But it took a little while for him to figure that out. It took him a while to figure out enough about himself that he could share that and connect with at least me, who. So that's the challenge. This isn't something, necessarily that it's going to be finished forever, but it certainly is something to start, and it's something that we would recommend. If you, if you have the energy, and we hope you will, to figure out who you are and why you are the way you are, with just a 10-minute introduction, you are going to be giving a marvelous gift to the people who support and depend upon you. And I think they'll be better people, and you will be much more of a servant leader, I think. So that's my shtick. And does anybody have any questions about this? Because this is definitely something that we're spreading the word. What we did is we wrote it as if, look at an event and then look at people and then come up with, your mission statement and then this and that and this and that. And the way people took it was as a recipe. So the next thing I heard, I kept hearing all these leadership points of view that, hit all 7 things. And by then I was so bored that, I didn't want to hear anything about them. And what it really is, what it really was these were all places that you could go to see if you could find an example or a story of something that would allow you to dig a little deeper and find something that would be meaningful to share. So really, the reason that we ask you to think about a person is that so you can think about the lessons you learn from that person. You don't want to tell a story without harvesting the story and saying, this is what I learned from this person and this is important to us because this fits, the value. Some people, some of the ones that I'm really enjoying is they figure out what are their 3 or 4 key values, and then they put a story under it from an event and a story under another one from a person, and and they sort of weave it around like that, so people can organize it in different ways. But it is in leading at a higher level, but it's not particularly. I can't wait till we revise that book.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But if anybody's really interested and wants to give us a card, we can email you a couple of examples of leadership point of view, just so you could see it if you're interested in it, because it's really exciting when people figure it out.
Yeah, it is.
And leading at a higher level was an attempt to pull together everything we've been teaching over the years. It's not a typical 1-minute manager book. It's about 350 pages. But all of our people, I had 18 co-authors for that one. Yeah. My mother used to say, why don't you write a book by yourself? I said, I already know what I know. And at my 70th birthday, I invited all my co-authors to come, and over 50 came. And, because I've only written 2 books by myself. One's a golf book. So many people worked in my golf game I didn't know how to write it with, and my spiritual journey. But so it's I really learned by being with people. In fact, that's just an interesting tidbit I'll just leave with you. Henry Blackaby, some of you know Henry from Experiencing God. He's an amazing guy in his 80s. He's been kind of a semi-mentor for me in my journey. But Henry always says, find out what God's doing and join in, And I said, Henry, I've never heard God say, Blanchard, I want you to do this. How do you know when God's talking to you? This could be the best advice we gave you all night. Henry said, what are you doing when you get your clearest thinking? He said some people do it in the shower, some people taking a run in the morning, some people reading, some people sitting in quietly and maybe meditating or what have you. He said, because if God is all-knowing, why wouldn't he be talking to you when you're getting your clearest thinking? And that's so interesting to ask. Margie gets a lot of her clearest thinking when she's reading. She just loves to read. Then she'll tell me what she's read, and then I give a lecture on it. And because I'm tonal, I don't like to read, because when I'm reading, she says, shut your mouth, because I'm going over every word. And that's why I write short books, because I don't want to have to read those long ones. But I realize that I get my clearest thinking when I interact with other people. And that's why I love to have so many co-authors. I kid my friends, Steve Covey and John Maxwell and all. I mean, how do you write a 300-page book all by yourself with no footnotes? Come on, give me a break. You don't know that much. So I just so enjoy working with other people. So Henry said, watch who comes into your life, because there might be some reason for that, since I do that.
The other thing is, if you know something about yourself that would be handy for people to know, like I was sharing with the women a little earlier, is one of the things I finally figured out about myself is that I'm a yes, maybe person. Yes, I'm interested in new ideas. Yes, I'd love to take a meeting to explore that. Maybe we'll do something about it. And people used to be so nervous when I would have meetings with people, because they would assume just because I'm having a meeting, we're going to go in that direction. Even my own team members felt that way. So when I was able to say, I'm a yes. I didn't know everybody wasn't like that. But I am a yes, maybe person. Yes, I'm interested. Maybe something will happen. Everybody just visibly reacted. I mean, visibly relaxed. And it was a gift that I gave them. It was something, if you know that you're one of these people who needs a lot of information in order to make a decision, or you only really should be talked to in the morning, that after 1 o'clock you're no good, let them know. If, that would be a very nice thing to share with somebody. Ken says, don't email me, voicemail me if it's really important.
I like to listen. I don't do email.
So,
why would you want to spend all your time sitting there looking at all this stuff? If you want to talk to me, give me a voice message,
If there are some important things that you've
My secretary finds those.
Yeah, that you've learned, then wouldn't it be nice to tell somebody earlier, especially if it was really important? So anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, so, just telling people those little facts about you is just really important, in terms of whether you're a morning person or how do you like to get messages, because people would email me and say, did you get that email? No, I don't know where, text messaging, forget it, my phone rings like this thing, and then I say, what's that, I'm a technological immigrant, and when I was at Cornell, we got the first mainframe computer when I was in graduate school. It was 2 stories high. And to run data, you had to hole punch these IBM cards, and then turn them into these obnoxious computer operators. Then you'd pray all night that your cards would have a big stack of papers under it, So after I did my dissertation, I said, well, that's enough about that. But I actually do a little stuff on the computer because I got really jealous of people on the planes. They're all working on the computer, but then they ended up playing, solitaire. So I really wanted to learn how to do solitaire. So I've learned that. But so it's just that whole thing. And what Margie's saying, Colleen, is so great. The people admire your skills, but they love your vulnerability, which means, don't you know that your bosses aren't perfect? Don't you know your spouse isn't perfect? Don't you know? So if they admit their imperfection, doesn't that feel just great? Now we both know. And it's amazing if you will share your vulnerabilities, they'll share their vulnerabilities with you. And then what you can do is make sure that you get people gathered around them who complete them, don't compete with them. Because to act like, all the brains in your office and you got no weaknesses. Everybody knows that's not true. So the sooner you fess up with things that I think the more they realize that they can fess up. I wrote a book with Gary Ridge from WD-40, and he and I agree. If you just make one change in a comment like at WD-40, there are no mistakes. There are only learning opportunities. And what a difference that makes, because people go to the boss, boy, did we have a learning opportunity yesterday morning, which means somebody screwed up, and then they say, well, good, I wonder what we can learn from that. It's just a whole different way to think about things. I was telling the group today when I turned 65 a few years ago, I'm talking to Zig Ziglar on the phone, the old motivation guy, and he invited Margie and I to the 59th anniversary of his 21st birthday. And I said, Ziggy, you're going to retire. He said, there's no mention of it in the Bible. Except for Jesus, Mary, David, nobody under 80 made an impact. He said, I'm refiring, not retiring. And what a different frame. Imagine if we called these refirement homes rather than retirement homes. We were down at a friend's. She's in a, quote, retirement home. We went in there and everybody's at the dinner table sitting around. Looked like they're ready to die. Somebody ought to grab the microphone. And the discussion question for tonight at the tables is, and to refire, just change it. What a difference when there's no mistakes, there's only learning opportunities. And so if you say to people, boy, here's one of my beliefs, there's no mistakes, there's learning opportunities. And I'd love for you, the sooner you share any learning opportunities, the more we can learn from it. And the people realize they're not going to get punished for that. That can be very valuable rather than trying to hide things.
Especially if you point out somebody that did that.
Yeah, Beckley, if you give an example of somebody that did that and shared with you, And that's for sure. Well, any final questions? Yeah.
What are you most proud of in your career?
What am I most proud of my career? That I married Margie. I mean, we're going to be married 50 years in June. And as I say, and I guess what else we're really proud of is that our kids work in our company and Margie's brother. And we run the company together. We have a family council. And, a lot of family businesses have problems, the poor Crystal Cathedral and all that. But we got smart enough when the kids and Margie's brother decided they wanted to work with us that we hired an outside consultant to work with us. And we meet once a quarter for a whole day, the five of us, for 17 years now. And nobody's ever missed a meeting. So no issues ever hang around because we got time to talk about things. That's really powerful. And he also said a really powerful thing for us that we were telling the folks this afternoon a little bit about, is that he said, you want Scott and Debbie and Tom to be owners of the company even if they don't work there. And we said, why do you say that? Because the problem with a lot of family businesses, the only way you get an ownership position is if you work there. So you have members of the family taking positions they're not qualified because they're interested in ownership. Said separate out ownership from management position. And so we set it up so now Scott and Tom and Margie and we each own 20% of the company. And like Debbie was in Chile for 3 years, so she had no management position, so she didn't get paid for that, but she had ownership. And so like our son, he'd be an awful president, but he doesn't have to be because he's an owner, and then he can get paid for what he's good at, which is speaking and doing stuff. He starts a lot of speeches off by saying, a lot of people want to know what it would be like to be the 1 minute son. And he said, when I was young, when I would get in trouble, which he was always in trouble, he said, I used to wish that I would get punished like my friends, sent to my room, even spanked. But no, I had to go down to the dinner table and talk to my mother and my father and my sister about how my behavior was inconsistent with family values. Which, of course, we established in an off-site retreat. But they really felt they were experiments, of all the learnings that Margie and I did. But it's been really great. So I think I'm really proud that they're part of the company and their spouses are part of the company. And we break all the rules about that. We have husbands and wives and kids and all. We have one couple who got 3 of their kids work with them in that couple. And we have, husbands reporting to wives and all kinds. We figure if we can't figure it out, why can't it? Why will anybody? Our rule about hiring people is when you hire somebody and they come through the front door, if you don't feel a chemical difference in your body because you saw them, why'd you hire them? There's enough jerks in the world. We don't have to work with them. And so that we got a lot of nice people. So I never forget, years ago, I met Mary Kay Cosmetic. And I said, Mary Kay, I've never met a mean-spirited Mary Kay salesperson. Where do you get all these people? She said, I just hire nice people. And I permit them to be just as nice as they want to be. And that became kind of a philosophy that we just hire really competent, nice people. We were just over in Palm Springs. We have a all-hands face-to-face meeting, once a year, but we haven't had it the last 2 years because of the economy, and everybody in the company said, let's save that money. But we just met for the first time in 3 years, 320, 50 of us or so. And the hotel people said, you're the strangest company we've ever seen. Why? I said, all you're doing is just hugging each other all the time, out in the halls and smiling and all that kind of thing. Yes, we break all the rules. But if you run a company, why not run it the way you want, Why would we want to run a company where nobody's having fun? We have four beliefs in our company. The reason we started, number one, we want to make a difference in the world. And people are really motivated by meaning, I think, more than money. Secondly, we wanted to work with people we cared and loved. Third, we wanted to practice what we preach. There's a lot of people out there who are consulting who have never had to meet a payroll, and they're telling people how to run organizations. with over 300 people, we got all the problems that any organization has, and then finally we wanted to have fun. If we don't have fun, then let's give it. We think you ought to take what you do seriously and yourself lightly. And so laughter is a major ingredient of stuff, particularly laughing at yourself. Oh, that was really a winner, wasn't it? That was a good one. So, any final questions or words for the good of the chapter? Why don't you all, I did this with a group, put your right hands on your left shoulder and your left hand on your right shoulder, and give yourself a hug, because you're involved with Biola, and what a fabulous place this is, and you are so smart being part of this.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.